Mercedes-Benz G-Class has been at the forefront of the luxury SUV movement for decades. These days, the brand offers 3 civilian variants: a 4-litre V8-powered G55, a 563 horsepower AMG G63, and the 166,000-pound AMG G65. Each machine is aimed at a different market, but they all get their engines installed the very same way.
A marriage is about to happen. This is very, very important station here in our process of the G-Class and our assembly facility. You can see the chassis coming in on the yellow carriers underneath, and then the body is coming from the top.
Since 1979, this station has seen over 300,000 matrimonial vows.
The challenging steps in the marriage phase are that many people have to work in unison. They have to be able to rely on one another.
To keep an eye on the ceremony, a craftsperson climbs up a staircase to watch the body drop.
He's checking over all his wiring and hoses so that nothing gets pinched during the marriage phase.
Like many car factories, the marriage station is highly complex, and the tolerances are critical.
The V12 is the most difficult. It's the largest engine and needs to fit into the same space as the V8 or the diesel.
These days, putting a big engine in an SUV is commonplace, thanks in large part to the G-Wagon.
Mercedes started the hot rod SUV. They just got the idea of, well, let's slap an AMG badge and a big motor and have a little bit of fun with an SUV. And everyone has followed suit.
The result is the dawn of the high-performance SUV era.
There was, from certain customers, always asked for more power. So we were looking for the biggest power engine in our company, and of course it is an AMG engine. So that was planted, so to say, in our vehicle. It was in the mid of the 90s when first editions came, and then basically from 2000 onwards, it was more intense. And towards the end of the decade, the G65 was introduced.
You're not going to be allowed on a racetrack in a G63 AMG. What they're saying is there's parts of the AMG DNA that can be applied to this G-Wagon. They're really loud exhaust, blingy wheels, and, blacked out styling. It looks violent. It sounds violent.
The idea to add an AMG engine begins in the 2000s. Yet surprisingly, it doesn't change the machine's sales.
The first 30 years, the G-Class was fluctuating between 4,000 in a very bad year up to 10,000 in a very good year. But several times it was discussed, when is the right point to end the G-Class?
It's hard to fathom now, but in the early 2000s, the G-Class's prospects looked bleak.
There have been a lot of times when Mercedes was going to kill the G-Wagon.
In 2006, the brand introduces a modern SUV called the GL, and many wonder if the G-Wagon's time is coming to a close.
So 2005 bis 2010.
I did have some doubts between 2005 and 2010 that this model would make it. In 2008, the economy was in crisis, and personally, I felt that this vehicle was at a possible tipping point.
Indeed, the G tips. Only instead of extinction, the machine's sales explode.
Roughly 8-9 years ago, interest started growing. And last year, we produced and sold more than 20,000 cars.
The business case for the G-Wagon is insane, because every time Mercedes has thought about killing it, somebody in Mercedes had the good sense to say, well, if we just charge a little bit more, we can keep it alive for another year.
They just keep selling, so why not keep selling it if the market wants it? They're just giving the market what it wants.
The G-Wagon breaks all the rules. The sales keep going up even though they don't do anything to it. There's no logic, there's no business school that can tell you that this is the reason why this product succeeds. It simply is.
Currently, worldwide SUV sales continue to surpass all other automotive genres. However, no matter how high the SUV wave gets, G-Wagon growth is limited.
Volume is not our main driver. We're building the car by hand. So therefore, there is always a natural limit.
Handcrafting might cap the total amount of vehicles produced, but the team seems keen to continue exploring how far they can push the G.
We've always been having discussions about what can be the pinnacle, what can come next. And we wanted to show what is possible. So that was when the Mercedes G63 6x6 was developed, to have a car with 3 axles.
After the 6x6 megatruck, they introduce another variant called 4x4 squared.
The 4x4 squared was basically derived from the feedback saying 6x6 is great, but the practical use is really limited. So we said, okay, let's make it shorter.
Then they take their newest theme to an outlandish extreme.
In our internal discussions, we said, how great would it be to start a tradition? We had a lot of customers asking for convertibles, so we thought maybe that is an idea to combine a longer wheelbase, and we're standing close to a Landaulet being built up here right now.
We often forget the Germans have a really good sense of humor. And not only have they realized that the G is a really strange business case that economists will probably study for years to come, they also are looking at the people who are buying these cars and realizing they're having fun with it. So Mercedes should also be having fun with it.
Regardless of which engine is installed, each body gets bolted to the chassis the same way.
The body is connected to the chassis with 3 bolts on each side, so a total of 6 bolts. And you have to imagine, marriage here is most of the time for life, so there ain't any divorces between the chassis and the body in most cases.
6 bolts to secure the body and an extremely rugged reputation. Then, further down the line, artisans add the wheel housings and fenders. As parts continue to be installed, in a sub-assembly station, they build up the angular bonnet.
This car will receive its hood in the next station, and we are, as a matter of fact, at the very end already of the second assembly line, which is the chassis line, and it almost looks like a G-Class already.
Just one stall over is perhaps the most famous station in the entire factory. The home of the iconic 3-pointed star.
This is where the grille is being sub-assembled, and finally the 3-pointed star is attached also to the grille.
Finished front grills head directly to the final assembly line.
It's another probably 20 stations before we, for the first time, start up the vehicle.
While the G-Wagon has mechanically stayed true to its utilitarian roots, the interior has gone markedly upscale.
This is the seat production. The seats for the G vehicle are manufactured here, from the smaller pieces up to the finished seat.
We have 1,000 different seat combinations that a customer could choose from. We make basically everything happen that you can imagine.
It takes up to 2 hours to manufacture just one seat. The first step is to inspect the leather. Then it's time to slice and dice using a high-tech cutter.
Wir können verschiedene Materialien damit zuschneiden. Leder.
We're able to cut various materials with it. Leather, plastic sheeting. and the whole pattern for the seat. The machine allows us the flexibility to alter the cut ourselves and adapt to the size.
Cut panels are stacked and stored until a craftsperson is ready to sew the pieces together.
I have felt a part of the G for a long time because it's like one large family.
The seats are a prime example of how efficiently the factory utilizes its limited space. There are no conveyors, just a simple cart to roll them to the line.
Seats are being installed, which is a very, very important step in the process, because at the end of the day, it connects the driver and the passenger with the vehicle itself.
After the seats are bolted into place, they add a bit of high-performance rubber. Then it's time for a quick twist of the wrist.
Yes, it's always a very special moment when a G-Class is being fired up and knowing that we will deliver it to a customer around the world.
Some of those finished G-Wagons will head a few kilometers down the road to one of the most grueling test circuits in the world. The Schockl Mountain.
The Schockl is the mountain where the G-Class really grew up on. It's a very, very tough off-road test track, and it's very well linked to Graz, to our hometown here.
The Schockl is part of the Graz mountain range and rises 1,445 meters from sea level. The mountain features a 3.1-kilometer trail that pushes the G-Class to its absolute limit and frightens even the most hardcore off-road enthusiast.
And these guys bomb down that trail. If you try to do that in almost any other SUV, you would just shake them apart. And that is what the G-Wagon is designed to do day in and day out. And that's something you can't replicate.
Duplicating the machine might be difficult, yet copying the Schockl Mountain is impossible. The one-of-a-kind trail offers a chance to prove the machine's mettle.
Nothing drives like the G-Wagon. You're driving this incredibly solid, heavy-feeling vehicle. It's just an entirely different experience than modern cars.
You're driving something with no compromises. This is not a car that someone said, well, you know, it should look really tough, but let's give it independent suspension so it rides well. Okay, it's been softened through the years and it's gotten a nicer interior, but the basics of it are a truck.
You sit really high. The windshield is super upright to the point where you can just reach out and touch it. The windows are just completely straight up and down. With the new AMG engines with the twin-turbo V8, it's a rocket. It accelerates hard.
The steering is old school. It's really slow. The driving position is pretty awful. I'm not that big of a guy, and even I can't really fit in it. It's a very different experience.
A very different drive thanks to its history and some modern tech.
Mercedes would never be able to sell these cars with 400 and 500, 600 horsepower if it weren't for modern electronics saving your butt every time. In normal driving, roll mitigation, stability control, they're kicking in constantly to save your bacon.
Continually adding modern tech has helped the machine survive the test of time and outlive nearly every single one of its competitors.
It's been around forever. They keep updating it. It doesn't look like anything on the road. It's just this weird outlier, but it all somehow works.
It's got lots of ground clearance, big beefy axles, and this is not for show, it's not style, it really is that tough. And even though a lot of people won't do it, you can absolutely thrash these things. You can beat them up off-road.
But the best thing about a G-Wagon is probably the fact that there's nothing else like it. It's sort of in a class of one.
It's a machine that was built for battle, yet found fame in civilian life. An iconic 4x4 that offers high performance, hardcore abilities, and ultra-luxe accoutrement. The G-Class, the last of its kind, and perhaps the ultimate Mercedes-Benz.